Get your loud little black attitude out of my lobby before I have you dragged out, sweetheart. Bradley Warren's open palm cracked across Renee Harrison's face. The sound echoed through the lobby like a gunshot. Her earring flew across the marble floor. Her lips split against her teeth. Blood filled her mouth, and the white hotel manager had no idea that he had just slapped the black woman whose name was carved in gold letters above the very door he wanted to throw her out of. She owned every inch of this building. She signed his paychecks, and in exactly 9 minutes, she would fire every single person standing in that lobby. But first, she let him believe he had won. Before we continue, drop a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from, and make sure you subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you absolutely cannot miss. Now let me tell you how this satisfying moment came to be. Renee Harrison had fought her whole life to stand in rooms where people said she didn't belong. 62 years old. 3 generations of hotel maids in her bloodline. Her grandmother had scrubbed floors for white families who never bothered to learn her name. Her mother had worked the same hotel in Mobile, Alabama for 31 years, cleaning toilets and changing sheets until her knees gave out and her back bent permanently forward. Renee had started the same way. 16 years old, pushing a housekeeping cart down carpeted hallways while white guests complained about finding her there. "Why is she in the hallway? Can't you people clean when we're not around?" She remembered every word, every look. Every time someone made her feel like she was invisible, or worse, like she was something unpleasant they had to step around. But Renee Harrison had never accepted what other people told her she was. She saved every penny from that housekeeping job. She took night classes after 12-hour shifts. She earned her GED, then her associate degree, then her bachelor's in business administration at 41 years old. Her MBA came at 45, paid for with money she had scraped together over decades. Her husband, James, had believed in her when no one else did. "You're going to own one of these hotels someday," he told her on their wedding night. "I can see it in your eyes. You're not the type to clean someone else's dream forever." James died 5 years into their marriage. Heart attack, no warning. He left her alone with a 3-year-old daughter and a dream that seemed impossible. She built that dream anyway. Her first hotel was a small property in Savannah, Georgia. Everyone said she would fail. A black woman with no connections, no family money, no investors willing to take a chance on her. The bank turned her down 4 times before she found one willing to give her a loan. That hotel didn't fail. It thrived. She bought another, then another, then another. Now at 62, Renee Harrison owned Harrison Hospitality Group. 23 luxury hotels across the American South. Her name on buildings. Her vision in every room. Her legacy carved into marble and gold. The crown jewel was the Harrison Grand in Atlanta. She had built it from the ground up, worked with architects for 3 years, designed every detail herself. It was everything she had dreamed of during those years, pushing a housekeeping cart. A place where everyone would feel welcome. A place where no one would ever be made to feel the way she had been made to feel. But something was wrong at the Harrison Grand. The complaints had started 6 months ago. Renee's executive assistant, Tanya, had compiled them into a folder that grew thicker every week. She brought it into Renee's office on a Tuesday morning, her young face troubled. "Ma'am, I think you need to see this." Renee took the folder. She opened it, and her blood went cold. A black family from Chicago charged an extra $500 security deposit that white guests never paid. A Latino businessman given a room on the lowest floor despite specifically requesting a view. An Asian couple asked for 3 forms of identification when the white couple ahead of them showed nothing at all. 37 complaints in 6 months, all from the same hotel, all dismissed as misunderstandings. "Who is the manager at the Grand?" Renee asked, though she already knew the answer. "Bradley Warren, ma'am. He's been there 15 years. His family still owns shares from the original investment." The Warren family. Old Atlanta money. They had invested in Renee's company when she was still building, when she needed capital more than she needed pride. She had given them shares in exchange for their support. A decision she had questioned many times since. Has anyone investigated these complaints? Tanya hesitated. The regional director says Bradley handles them internally. He says most are misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. Renee tasted the word like poison. 37 misunderstandings in 6 months. All involving guests of color. All at the same property. All under the same manager. Ma'am, I know how this looks. But Bradley is connected. His uncle sits on our board. If we push too hard without solid proof, I understand, Tanya. And she did understand. Perfectly. The system was protecting its own. The same system that had kept her mother on her knees for 31 years. The same system that had told Renee her entire life that she didn't belong in rooms like this one. But Renee Harrison hadn't built an empire by accepting what the system told her. Cancel my meetings for Thursday and Friday. Ma'am, I'm going to Atlanta, but I'm not going as the CEO. Renee looked up and something hard glittered in her eyes. I'm going as a guest, a regular black woman trying to check into a luxury hotel. Let's see exactly how my staff treats people when they think no one important is watching. Tanya's face went pale. Renee, are you sure if something happens? Something is already happening, Tanya. Something has been happening for months, maybe years, and I need to see it with my own eyes. That night, Renee called her daughter Michelle in Chicago. Michelle had followed her mother's footsteps into hard work and determination, but she had chosen medicine instead of hospitality. She was a pediatric surgeon now, 40 years old, married with 2 children of her own. Mama, this is crazy, Michelle said when Renee explained her plan. What if they recognize you? They won't, baby. I haven't done press events in years. My photo isn't in the lobbies anymore. But if something happens, then at least I'll know the truth. Michelle was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with worry. Daddy always said you were the bravest woman he ever knew, but sometimes brave and foolish look exactly the same. Renee touched the gold locket she always wore, the one James had given her on their wedding day. Your father also said that sometimes you have to walk into the fire to prove it won't burn you. And if it does burn you, then at least everyone will see the flames. She hung up and tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. She lay in the darkness thinking about her mother's hands cracked and red from cleaning chemicals. Thinking about hotel lobbies where no one would look her in the eye. Thinking about 37 complaints that had been swept under expensive rugs. The morning came too soon. Renee dressed carefully, a navy blue dress, simple and professional. The kind of dress a successful black businesswoman might wear to a conference or a meeting. Nothing that screamed wealth, nothing that demanded attention. She wanted to be seen as ordinary. She wanted to be seen the way her guests were seen. She drove herself to Atlanta in a rental car. No driver, no town car, no luxury. She checked into a small bed and breakfast the night before, paid cash, used a fake name. And then, on a Thursday morning, that would change everything. She walked into the Harrison Grand Hotel. Her name was above the door in gold letters. Her vision was in every corner. Her legacy was carved into the marble beneath her feet. But the doorman didn't see any of that. He was young, white, early 20s. He barely glanced at Renee as she approached. His eyes slid right past her to find the white couple emerging from a Mercedes behind her. His face brightened immediately. Welcome to the Harrison Grand. May I help with your luggage? Renee kept walking. She had trained her door staff personally when this hotel opened. Greet every guest with eye contact and a smile. Make everyone feel welcome from the first moment they enter. It was the foundation of her hospitality philosophy. This doorman had ignored her completely. First sign. The lobby was exactly as she had designed it, but the atmosphere felt different, colder. The warmth she had tried to build into every corner seemed to have been quietly drained away. She approached the front desk. A young clerk stood there, name tag reading Casey. professional but distant. Their eyes flickered over Renee with an assessment that felt practiced and cold. "Good morning," Renee said pleasantly. "I have a reservation under the name Johnson." She had booked under a different name, paid with a card from a shell company. No connection to Harrison Hospitality. Casey's fingers moved over the keyboard without looking up. "ID and credit card, please." The words came out clipped, mechanical. No warmth whatsoever. Renee reached for her wallet. That's when she noticed the couple beside her. White, well-dressed, checking in at the next station. The clerk helping them was laughing, chatting about restaurants recommending shows. No request for ID. Renee placed her driver's license and credit card on the counter. Casey picked them up, studied the license for a long moment. Too long. Then frowned at the computer screen. "There seems to be an issue with your previous charge." "I'm sorry." "The system shows a double charge on your reservation. You were charged twice for the first night." Renee knew there was no double charge. She had made the reservation herself, watched the transaction go through once. This was either a test or a scam. "I noticed that online," she said carefully. "I'd like to speak to someone about correcting it." "Ma'am." The voice came from behind the counter, deep, commanding. The voice of a man who expected to be obeyed. "Is there a problem here?" Renee turned, and there he was, Bradley Warren, 15 years at this hotel, nephew of a board member. The man whose management had generated 37 discrimination complaints that somehow never reached Renee's desk. He was tall, white, early 50s, silver hair, black suit that probably cost more than most of his housekeeping staff earned in a month. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who had never been questioned in his life. "I was just explaining about a billing error," Renee said, keeping her voice even. Bradley's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sure you've misunderstood our rate structure. We're very clear about our pricing." "I haven't misunderstood anything. I'm simply saying my card was charged twice for the same night." "Perhaps." Bradley leaned forward, placing both hands on the counter, deliberately invading her space. "You'd be more comfortable at another establishment, something more in your price range." The words hit Renee like a slap. She had heard those words her entire life. When she was a teenager trying to shop in nice stores. When she was in college trying to join professional organizations. When she was building her business trying to secure loans. "You'd be more comfortable somewhere else." Translation: you don't belong here. But this was her hotel. Her name was on the building. Her vision had created every inch of this space. "I understand the rates perfectly well," Renee said, her voice steady, despite the rage building in her chest. "What I don't understand is why you're refusing to address a simple billing error." Bradley's smirk widened. "Ma'am, I've been managing luxury properties for 15 years. I can assure you our billing system doesn't make mistakes." "Then perhaps the mistake is in your customer service." Something flickered in Bradley's eyes. Surprise, then anger. People didn't talk back to him. That much was clear. "Now," he said, his voice dropping to something colder. "If you'd like to make a new reservation at our standard rate, I'd be happy to assist. But I won't have guests making accusations against my staff." "Your staff?" "Yes, my staff." Bradley straightened his jacket. "I run this hotel. I've run it for 15 years, and in that time, I've learned to spot certain types of guests." "What type would that be?" Bradley's smile became a weapon. "The type who come in making demands, expecting special treatment, crying discrimination when they don't get their way." He paused deliberately. "The type who try to scam our system with fake billing disputes." Renee's hands trembled at her sides, but her voice stayed calm. "I want to speak with someone in authority, someone above you." Bradley laughed, actually laughed loud enough for nearby guests to turn and stare. "Sweetheart, I am the authority here, and I'm telling you, either accept our rates or find yourself somewhere else to stay." He gestured toward the door with mock helpfulness. "There's a Holiday Inn about 3 miles down the road. More your speed, I'm sure." The lobby had gone quiet. Other guests watched with uncomfortable fascination. Staff members exchanged glances but said nothing. This was clearly not the first time Bradley had performed this routine. "I'd like to call corporate," Renee said, reaching for her phone. What happened next happened fast. Bradley's hand shot across the counter and clamped around her wrist. His grip was tight, painful. His fingers dug into her skin hard enough to leave marks. "You're not calling anyone." The words were a command, an order, the voice of a man who had spent his whole life giving orders and having them followed without question. Renee looked down at his hand on her wrist. Then she looked up at his face. "Take your hands off me." "Not until you calm down." "I am calm. You're the one grabbing people." "You were reaching for your phone. I don't know what you were planning to do. Maybe take pictures to post online with some made-up story. I've seen your type do it before." "My type?" "You know exactly what I mean." Renee did know, and the knowing made her angrier than the grip on her wrist. "Let go of me. Now!" "Or what?" Bradley's face flushed red. He released her wrist, but came around the counter with quick, aggressive steps. Suddenly, he was in her space, using his height to tower over her close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne and the coffee on his breath. "You come in here causing a scene," he hissed. "Trying to run some kind of scam, and then you threaten me with corporate." He shook his head slowly, mockingly. "I don't think so." Renee didn't step back, didn't flinch, didn't give him an inch. "This is my last warning. Step away from me." "Or what you'll call the police." Bradley's laugh was ugly. "Go ahead. See whose side they take. A hysterical black woman making false accusations, or a hotel manager protecting his property from a scammer." The words hung in the air between them like poison, and Renee understood with absolute clarity exactly what she was dealing with. This wasn't just racism. This was racism so comfortable, so confident, so protected by wealth and connections that it didn't even bother to hide anymore. "I will say this one final time," Renee said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is my hotel, and you need to step back, now." Bradley's face twisted with rage and disbelief. "Your hotel." He looked around the lobby, inviting everyone to share in his amusement. Several staff members smirked. Others found sudden interest in their computer screens or the floor. "Lady, I've worked here 15 years. I know every owner, every board member, every investor. And you." His eyes traveled down her body and back up with unveiled contempt. "You are definitely not one of them." He stepped even closer. Renee could feel his breath on her face. "Now get your loud little black attitude out of my lobby before I have you dragged out, sweetheart." And then he slapped her. His open palm cracked across her face with enough force to snap her head to the side. Her earring flew off and skittered across the marble floor. Her lips split against her teeth. Blood filled her mouth. The sound echoed through the lobby like a thunderclap. For a moment, the entire world stopped. The lobby fell completely silent. Phones rose in the air. Guests froze mid-step. Staff members stared with wide eyes. Even the background music seemed to pause. Renee's hand rose slowly to her burning cheek. She could feel the impact spreading across her face like fire. She could feel the eyes of everyone watching. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her generations of black women who had been slapped and beaten and told to know their place. But she didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She turned her head slowly back to face Bradley Warren. And what he saw in her eyes made him take an unconscious step backward. Something had shifted. Something fundamental. The certainty that had carried Bradley through 15 years of bullying flickered and died in that moment. Because Renee Harrison wasn't afraid. She wasn't humiliated. She wasn't beaten. She was absolutely, terrifyingly calm. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," she said quietly. Bradley forced a laugh, but it came out wrong. Too high, too nervous. "Are you threatening me? I'll have you arrested for assault. You attacked me. I have witnesses." "Yes, you do," Renee agreed. "So do I." She reached into her purse. Bradley tensed, perhaps expecting pepper spray or a weapon. But what she pulled out was her phone. The call connected on the second ring. "Operations. This is Marcus." "Marcus, this is Dr. Renee Harrison." The name landed like a bomb in the silent lobby. Renee watched it hit different people in different ways. Casey at the front desk went pale as milk. An older black woman near the concierge desk. Dorothy Jenkins, the head housekeeper, half rose from her chair with recognition and something like hope dawning in her eyes. But Bradley Warren just frowned. Confused. The name meant nothing to him. He had worked at this hotel for 15 years, and he had never bothered to learn what the owner looked like. "I've just been physically assaulted in the lobby of my own hotel." Renee continued, her voice carrying clearly through the silent space. "By your manager, Bradley Warren." "Dr. Harrison." Marcus's voice cracked through the speaker. "My God, are you all right? Hold on, I'm conferencing in HR immediately." Bradley's smirk was beginning to falter now. Something was wrong. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. "This is ridiculous," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "She's obviously lying. Someone get security." But no one moved. "Dr. Harrison." A new voice joined the call. "Angela Chen from HR. We're recording this call. Please tell us exactly what happened." Renee's voice remained steady. Professional. The voice of a woman who had built an empire on staying calm when everyone expected her to fall apart. "At approximately 9:47 a.m., your manager Bradley Warren physically grabbed my wrist when I attempted to make a phone call about a billing dispute. When I told him to remove his hands, he came around the counter, invaded my personal space, and slapped me across the face hard enough to split my lip. This occurred in full view of guests and staff. Your security cameras should have captured everything." The color drained from Bradley's face. Security cameras. He had used those cameras himself plenty of times, reviewing footage of guests he wanted to discredit, editing clips to support his version of events. But now those cameras had recorded him. "Ms. Chen," Renee continued, "I want security to immediately confiscate Mr. Warren's access cards and keys. No one is to touch the security footage. I want it downloaded and sent to corporate within the next 5 minutes." "Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Security has been notified. We're dispatching corporate representatives now." Bradley found his voice. "This is some kind of scam. I've never seen this woman before in my life. She can't be Dr. Harrison. Dr. Harrison is—" He stopped. Because he had no idea what Dr. Harrison was. He had never met her, never seen her, never bothered to look up a photo of the woman whose name was literally carved into the building above his head. A quiet voice cut through his stammering. "Are you all right, Dr. Harrison?" Dorothy Jenkins stepped forward. 68 years old, 35 years at this hotel. She walked with a slight limp from an old injury, but she carried herself with quiet dignity. "Should I call for medical assistance?" The lobby's atmosphere shifted instantly. Every staff member knew Dorothy. They had all seen her picture with Dr. Harrison in the employee newsletter just last month, celebrating her 35 years of service. Dorothy had stood next to the CEO, smiling, shaking her hand. If Dorothy recognized this woman, then this woman was exactly who she said she was. Bradley Warren had just slapped the owner of the hotel across the face. "I'm fine, Dorothy. Thank you." Renee's voice softened when she addressed the older woman. "Please help me gather all on-duty staff in the lobby immediately." Dorothy nodded and moved away, pulling out her radio. Bradley backed up another step, bumping into the counter behind him. His hands were shaking now. "Now wait just a minute. This is all a misunderstanding. I didn't know who she was. She wasn't acting like a guest. She was being aggressive and— Mr. Warren. Marcus's voice cut through the speaker like a blade. Do not move from that lobby. Corporate security is en route. Any attempt to leave the premises will be considered an admission of guilt and obstruction. You can't do this to me. Bradley's voice had risen to something close to a shriek. My family has been with this company since the beginning. My uncle is on the board. I'll have you all fired, every single one of you. Renee pressed another button on her phone. The manager on duty chime rang through the hotel's PA system. 3 sharp bells that echoed through every floor, every hallway, every room. Staff meetings were mandatory when those bells rang. Everyone knew what they meant. Within minutes, employees began filtering into the lobby. Housekeepers in their uniforms still carrying cleaning supplies. Maintenance workers in their coveralls, tools hanging from their belts. Kitchen staff in their aprons, hands still dusted with flour. Front desk personnel in their pressed suits, confusion written across their faces. They clustered in uncertain groups, whispering among themselves, watching the scene unfold. Dorothy worked her way through the crowd, ensuring every department was represented. She had done this countless times for staff meetings, but never like this. Never with blood on her employer's lip and fear in her manager's eyes. Renee stood in the center of the lobby, one hand still holding her phone, the other touching her split lip. The red mark on her cheek stood out against her dark skin like a brand. For those who don't recognize me, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the marble space. I am Dr. Renee Harrison, CEO and founder of Harrison Hospitality Group. This company, these hotels, this building. I built them. I own them. My name is above the door. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some faces went pale. Others showed no surprise at all. 9 minutes ago, your manager physically assaulted me in this lobby. He grabbed my wrist. He slapped me across the face. He split my lip. She paused, letting the words sink in. But this is not an isolated incident. She scanned the faces before her. Some looked away. Others stared defiantly. A few nodded slowly, unsurprised. They had known. They had always known. And no one had done anything. Over the past year, this property has generated 37 complaints about discriminatory treatment. Black guests charged extra deposits. Latino families given the worst rooms. Asian couples subjected to additional identification requirements. 37 complaints. All systematically downplayed. All ignored. All buried. She let that number hang in the air. I came here today to investigate those reports personally. I wanted to see with my own eyes how this hotel treats guests when the CEO isn't watching. Her gaze found Bradley Warren, who had pressed himself against the counter like he was trying to melt through it. I didn't expect such immediate confirmation. She lifted her phone slightly. Angela, please note the time. Effective immediately, I am implementing an emergency shutdown of this property for a complete cultural and conduct review. Her voice hardened to steel. Additionally, all current on-duty staff are terminated. Effective immediately. The words landed like bombs. Gasps erupted throughout the lobby. Someone dropped a cleaning bucket. Someone else started crying. A man in maintenance coveralls shouted, "You can't do this." "I can, and I am." Renee's voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. HR will contact each of you individually. Those who are found not to be complicit in this culture of discrimination may be offered positions at other properties. For many of you, that may mean a second chance. She paused. For most of you, this is your final day in my house. Bradley Warren finally found his voice. This is illegal. You can't fire people without cause. My family's lawyers will destroy you. My uncle will have you removed from your own board. You're finished. Your family's lawyers, Renee interrupted smoothly, can contact our legal department. I'm sure they'll be especially interested in the security footage showing you assaulting me. Her phone chimed with an incoming notification. Dr. Harrison. Angela's voice came through the speaker. The board is requesting an emergency meeting in 30 minutes. Tell them I'll be there. Renee ended the call, and slipped the phone into her purse. The lobby had erupted into controlled chaos. Staff members were being directed toward exits. Guests were being quietly escorted to the dining room where they would be offered transportation to other hotels. Security guards had appeared at every door, and Bradley Warren stood alone watching his world crumble. 2 security officers approached him. Men who had worked under him for years. Men who had laughed at his jokes and looked the other way when he mistreated guests. Now they wouldn't meet his eyes. "Mr. Warren, we need your access cards and keys." "This isn't over," Bradley hissed. "My family will destroy her. We'll take this whole company down." But his voice was shaking, and everyone could hear it. Dorothy Jenkins approached Renee quietly, a worn notebook clutched to her chest. "Dr. Harrison," she said softly, "I've been keeping records since 1989. I wrote down everything, dates, names, incidents. I thought maybe someday someone would care enough to look." Renee looked at the notebook, at the weathered pages filled with 35 years of documented injustice, at the woman who had carried this weight alone for decades, writing in secret, hoping against hope that someday the truth would matter. "I care, Dorothy." Renee's voice cracked for the first time. "And I'm looking now." Across the lobby, Bradley Warren was being escorted toward a side office. His face had gone from red to pale, to something grayish and sick. He was already on his phone, presumably calling his uncle, his lawyers, anyone who might save him. But there was no saving him now. The cameras had recorded everything. The witnesses had seen everything. And the woman he had slapped across the face owned every inch of the building he stood in. 9 minutes. That's all it had taken. 9 minutes from assault to termination. 9 minutes from confident bully to disgraced criminal. 9 minutes from believing he was untouchable to learning he had touched exactly the wrong woman. Renee touched her swollen lip, tasting blood. She had won this battle. But as she looked around at the chaos, at the frightened faces, and the angry whispers, and the phone still recording, she knew the truth. Bradley Warren's family had money, connections, board members in their pocket, lawyers on retainer. They would fight back. They would spin this story. They would make her the villain. The war was just beginning, and somewhere in this hotel, in a security room, she couldn't see footage was being reviewed by people she couldn't trust. Evidence that could save her or destroy her depending on whose hands it fell into. Dorothy squeezed her arm gently. 35 years I've been waiting for this day, the older woman said. Whatever comes next, Dr. Harrison, you're not facing it alone. Renee looked into Dorothy's eyes and saw something she hadn't expected. Hope. After 35 years of writing in secret, of documenting abuse that no one would acknowledge, of watching men like Bradley Warren prosper, while good people suffered in silence, Dorothy Jenkins finally had hope. And Renee Harrison would burn down her entire empire before she let that hope die. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter Michelle. "Mom, are you okay? It's all over the news already." Already on the news. Already being spun. Already being shaped into whatever story the powerful wanted people to believe. Renee straightened her spine, touched the gold locket at her throat, thought of James, who had believed in her when no one else did. "You're going to own one of these hotels someday," he had told her. She owned 23 now, and she would fight for every single one of them. The board meeting started exactly 30 minutes after the lobby incident. Renee sat at the head of the conference table, in Harrison Hospitality's Atlanta headquarters, ice pressed against her swollen lip. The bruise on her cheek had already darkened to purple. She hadn't bothered to cover it with makeup. Let them see what Bradley Warren had done. Victoria Palmer appeared first on the video screen, silver hair, perfect expression, carefully neutral. The board chair's face gave nothing away, but her eyes lingered on Renee's injuries for a long moment. "Renee, are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm fine, Victoria. Let's begin." Other board members flickered onto the screen one by one. Marcus Chen, the COO, looked genuinely concerned. Robert Thornton, head of finance, seemed nervous. And there in the corner of the grid was William Warren, Bradley's uncle, the man who had invested in Renee's company 20 years ago, the man whose family still held significant shares, the man whose nephew had just slapped her across the face in her own hotel lobby. William's expression was stone. Before we discuss operations, Victoria began carefully, I want to acknowledge that any physical assault is completely unacceptable. The board will not tolerate violence against any employee, much less our CEO. Renee noted the careful phrasing. Acknowledged, not condemned, not denounced. Thank you, Victoria. I trust you've all been briefed on the immediate actions I've taken. Yes, about that. Victoria's practiced smile tightened. While we understand your reaction, there are concerns about the optics of terminating an entire staff without proper notice. The operational disruption alone could cost us millions. The optics, Renee repeated flatly, of addressing systematic discrimination. Renee. Victoria leaned closer to her camera. There are complications here we need to discuss. Bradley Warren isn't just any manager. He's part of the founding family. They still hold significant shares in this company. Are you suggesting his family connection excuses assault? Of course not. But it does impact how aggressively we can move forward. Victoria glanced at something off-screen. The Warren family has deep connections throughout the hospitality industry. They're already reaching out to other board members. They're expressing concerns about what they're calling rash actions and potential misunderstandings. William Warren finally spoke. His voice was ice. My nephew made a mistake. He acknowledges that. But firing an entire staff, shutting down a flagship property, this is an overreaction that will cost shareholders millions. Your nephew split my lip, Renee said quietly. He grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave bruises. He called me sweetheart and told me to take my black attitude somewhere else. In my hotel. In front of my guests. He didn't know who you were. And that makes it acceptable. William's jaw tightened. I'm saying there's context here that's being ignored. Bradley has managed that property for 15 years without incident. One confrontation with an unidentified woman doesn't justify destroying his career. 37 complaints, Renee shot back. 37 documented instances of discrimination under his management, all buried, all ignored. Unsubstantiated complaints from guests looking for free upgrades and refunds. Every hotel deals with them. Dorothy Jenkins has records going back 35 years, written documentation of racist behavior, discriminatory practices, complaints that were systematically silenced. Something flickered across William's face. Fear, anger. Dorothy Jenkins is a housekeeper with a grudge. She's been passed over for promotion multiple times. Her records are worthless. Her records are evidence. Victoria held up her hand. Let's take a breath here. We're all emotional. What we need is time to review the situation properly. A cooling off period. A cooling off period, Renee repeated. Yes. Perhaps it would be best if you stepped back temporarily, just until we can complete a thorough review of the incident and its aftermath. The words hung in the air like poison. Step back. From the company she had built from nothing. From the empire she had created with her own hands. Because a white man had slapped her, and his family wanted it swept under the rug. I will not step back from defending my own dignity. Renee said, her voice hard as steel, or the principles this company was built on. The meeting continued for another hour, but nothing was resolved. Victoria urged caution. William Warren threatened legal action. Other board members sat silently unwilling to choose sides. By the time the screens went dark, Renee knew the truth. The system was protecting its own, just like it always had. 2 hours after the board meeting, Renee's phone buzzed with a text from Michelle Torres, her oldest friend and the best civil rights attorney in Atlanta. Saw the news. My office. Now. Renee had known Michelle since law school, back when they were both young black women trying to prove they belonged in spaces that didn't want them. Michelle had stayed in the trenches fighting discrimination cases with fierce determination. Renee had shifted to business building something different, but they had never stopped being sisters in the struggle. Michelle's office was chaos when Renee arrived. Papers everywhere, 3 junior attorneys hunched over laptops, a whiteboard covered in notes and timelines. "Sit down," Michelle commanded, "and start from the beginning." Renee told her everything. The complaints, the undercover visit, Bradley's aggression, the slap, the terminations, the board meeting. Michelle listened without interruption, her legal pad filling with notes. "The Warren family is already mobilizing," Michelle said when Renee finished. "I've had 2 calls in the last hour from attorneys representing their interests. They're threatening wrongful termination suits for every single employee you fired. Let them. It's not that simple, Renee. They have resources, connections, and they're going to fight dirty." Michelle pulled up something on her laptop. "Have you seen this yet?" She turned the screen toward Renee. A video was playing, the lobby footage from that morning. But something was wrong. The video started after the slap. It showed only Renee gathering staff in the lobby, her voice distorted to sound shrill and aggressive. Background music had been added, dark and ominous. The timestamps had been edited. Bradley's assault was completely absent. "Breaking news," the anchor announced over the footage. "Shocking video emerges from the Harrison Grand Hotel incident. Watch as CEO Renee Harrison launches what witnesses describe as a racially motivated tirade before firing the entire staff without cause." Renee felt the blood drain from her face. Where did this come from? It's everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. It went viral about 45 minutes ago. Michelle's expression was grim. The accounts that first posted it are connected to the Warren family. They had this ready to go, Renee. They were prepared for you to fight back. Renee watched the manipulated video play again. Watched herself transformed from assault victim into aggressor. Watched her measured words twisted into something unhinged and racist. "This is a lie," she whispered. "Of course it's a lie. But lies spread faster than truth." Michelle pulled up social media feeds. "Look at the hashtags. Surge racist CEO is trending. Unhinged boss. Black privilege. They're painting you as the villain." Renee's phone buzzed. Then again. Then continuously. Tanya's name flashed on the screen. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. The stock is down 12% in pre-market trading. Major shareholders are calling. Clients are threatening to pull their conferences. The press is requesting statements. Tell them no comment for now." "Ma'am, there's something else." Tanya's voice dropped. "The board is calling another emergency meeting. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. "About what?" Silence. "Tanya, about what?" "There's a vote of no confidence on the agenda, ma'am. They want to remove you as CEO." Renee ended the call. Her hand was shaking. Michelle was already on her feet. "We need evidence. The original, unedited security footage. Everything from those cameras time-stamped and authenticated. Can you get it? I ordered it downloaded and sent to corporate immediately after the incident." "Who has access to the security system at the hotel?" Renee's stomach dropped. "Bradley Warren." They stared at each other. "Get someone you trust to that hotel right now," Michelle said, "before that footage disappears forever." Renee dialed Dorothy's number. It rang 4 times before the older woman answered. "Dr. Harrison." "Dorothy, I need your help. The security footage from this morning. Who has access to the system?" "Mr. Warren controls it personally. He reviews all footage before it goes to corporate. Always has." Dorothy's voice tightened. "But Dr. Harrison, there's something you should know. After you left, his people went straight to the security office. They were in there for almost an hour. Did anyone else have access? Anyone who might have saved a copy?" Silence. Then Dorothy spoke carefully. There's a young clerk, Casey Mitchell. They were at the front desk this morning. Saw everything. A pause. Casey's different from the others. Quiet. Keeps to themselves. But I've seen them watching when things happen. Taking notes. I always wondered if they were keeping records like me. Do you have their number? I'll text it to you. 5 minutes later, Renee was dialing Casey Mitchell. The phone rang 6 times. She was about to hang up when a nervous voice answered. Hello. Casey, this is Dr. Renee Harrison. We met this morning. Dead silence. I know you witnessed what happened in the lobby. I know you saw Bradley Warren assault me, and I know you're probably scared right now. I can't talk to you. Casey's voice was barely audible. Mr. Warren said anyone who talks to you will be blacklisted from the industry. His family knows everyone. Casey, listened to me. That man hit me. He discriminated against me in my own hotel. And now his family is editing security footage to make me look like the criminal. Renee paused. I need to know if anyone saved the original footage, before it was tampered with. Silence stretched for what felt like forever. Then Casey spoke so quietly, Renee had to strain to hear. I copied the files, all of them, multiple angles, before anyone could touch them. Renee's heart stopped. You have the original footage. I have everything. The footage, the chat logs from our staff group, screenshots of Mr. Warren's instructions about how to treat certain guests. Casey's voice cracked. My grandmother worked as a hotel maid for 40 years. She used to come home with stories about how they treated her. She told me to keep my head down, stay out of trouble. But I couldn't. Not this time. Not after what I saw. Casey, will you testify? Will you share what you have? Another long pause. They'll destroy me, the Warren family. They'll make sure I never work again. I will protect you, whatever it takes. Legal protection, financial support, a new position at any hotel in my chain anywhere in the country you want to go. You promise? On my mother's memory, I promise. Casey let out a shaky breath. There's a coffee shop on Peachtree, Luna's. I can meet you there in an hour. The line went dead. Renee looked at Michelle Hope, flickering in her chest for the first time since the board meeting. We might have everything we need. 6 p.m., Luna's coffee shop. Casey Mitchell sat in a back booth baseball cap, pulled low hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee. They looked young, scared, like a rabbit ready to bolt at the first sign of danger. Renee slid into the seat across from them. Michelle stayed standing watching the door. Thank you for meeting me, Renee said quietly. Casey didn't look up. I almost didn't come. The staff group chat has been blowing up all day. Everyone's celebrating Mr. Warren as a hero, sharing memes about you, calling you. They swallowed hard. Calling you horrible things. Show me. Casey pulled out their phone, scrolled through the messages. Renee felt her stomach turn as she read. Bradley himself had posted, stood up to that race baiter today, put her right in her place. My family will make sure she pays. Others had piled on. Racist jokes, crude comments about Renee's appearance, celebration of violence against a black woman. From employees she had given jobs, in a hotel that bore her name. These people work for me, Renee said softly. Not all of them are like this. Casey finally looked up. Their eyes were red-rimmed. Some of us knew it was wrong. We were scared. Mr. Warren controlled everything. Schedules, promotions, references. If he wanted to destroy your career, he could, and everyone knew his family would back him up. But you kept records anyway. My grandmother always said the truth has to live somewhere, even if nobody's listening. Casey reached into their bag and pulled out a USB drive. Everything's on here, the original security footage, all the angles, the chat logs going back 2 years, screenshots of emails where Mr. Warren gave instructions about how to handle certain types of guests. Casey's hand trembled as they slid the drive across the table. He had a whole system, Black guests got flagged for extra security deposits. Hispanic families were automatically assigned to lower floors. Asian guests got the rooms near the elevator that nobody wanted. It was all documented, all organized, all approved by corporate. Approved by corporate? Michelle leaned in sharply. Who approved it? I don't know names, but there are emails, reference codes. Whatever Mr. Warren did, someone higher up knew about it. Renee picked up the USB drive. Such a small thing, such an enormous weight. Casey, why did you do this? You could have looked the other way like everyone else. Casey was quiet for a long moment. 3 months ago, a black family checked in for their daughter's wedding. Beautiful girl, 22 years old, first person in her family to graduate college. They had saved for years to have the reception at the Harrison Grand. Casey's voice cracked. Mr. Warren called security on them during the rehearsal dinner, said they were being too loud, made the bride's mother cry in front of all her guests, made that young woman's special day into a nightmare. Tears spilled down Casey's cheeks. The bride looked at me when security was escorting her family out. Just looked at me, like she was asking how I could let this happen, how any of us could let this happen. Casey wiped their face. I went home that night and I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her eyes, and I knew I had to do something, even if it destroyed me. Renee reached across the table and squeezed Casey's hand. It won't destroy you, I promise. 9 p.m., Michelle's office. The footage played on a large screen while Michelle's team took notes. Every angle, every moment. Bradley's aggression, his hand on Renee's wrist. The slap that echoed through the lobby. Undeniable, unedited, devastating. This proves the viral video was deliberately manipulated, Michelle said. Look at the timestamps. The original footage clearly shows the assault occurring before any confrontation. They cut it to make Renee look like the aggressor. Can we prove who edited it? One of the junior attorneys asked. Casey's files include metadata. The edits were made on a computer registered to the Harrison Grand Security Office. We can trace it back to Bradley Warren directly. Renee's phone buzzed. A text from Tanya. Board meeting confirmed for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Vote of no confidence is first on the agenda. Victoria Palmer is backing the motion. Renee showed the text to Michelle. They're trying to remove me before we can present any of this evidence. Then we need to move faster. Michelle was already typing. I'm filing an emergency injunction to preserve all evidence, and I'm reaching out to media contacts. If they want to play the PR game, we'll play it better. No. Renee shook her head. Not yet. Not until after the board meeting. Renee, if they vote you out tomorrow, then they vote me out, but I want to see exactly who stands where. I want to know who my enemies are. Renee's eyes hardened. And then we burn them down. 7 a.m. The morning of the board meeting. Renee hadn't slept. She had spent the night at Michelle's office, reviewing evidence, preparing arguments, steeling herself for what was coming. Dorothy Jenkins arrived at 6, carrying a cardboard box filled with worn notebooks. 35 years, she said, setting the box on Michelle's conference table. Every incident, every complaint, every time someone told me to keep quiet and mind my own business. She pulled out the oldest notebook, its pages yellowed with age. This one starts in 1989. The first year Mr. Warren's family got involved with the company. Renee opened the notebook carefully. Dorothy's handwriting was neat and precise. Dates, names, descriptions. A meticulous record of injustice that no one had ever bothered to read. Why did you keep all this, Dorothy, for so long? My mama used to say that the truth is like a seed. You plant it and you tend it and you wait. Sometimes you wait your whole life. But eventually, if you're patient enough, it grows into something that can't be ignored. Dorothy touched the notebook gently. I've been waiting 35 years for someone to care, Dr. Harrison. And yesterday, when you stood in that lobby with blood on your lip and fire in your eyes, I knew the wait was finally over. 8:45 a.m. Conference room. The board members were already assembled when Renee walked in. Victoria Palmer sat at the head of the table, her expression carefully neutral. William Warren sat to her right, his face hard with barely concealed hostility. Robert Thornton wouldn't meet Renee's eyes. Marcus Chen looked miserable. 3 other board members sat in uncomfortable silence. Dr. Harrison. Victoria's voice was cool. Thank you for joining us. Did I have a choice? This meeting was called to address concerns about recent events at the Harrison Grand Hotel. Given the severity of the situation, the board feels it's necessary to discuss leadership continuity. You mean you want to fire me? We want to explore options that protect shareholder value. My stock has dropped 18% because of a manipulated video. Renee placed her folder on the table. A video that was edited by Bradley Warren to remove his assault on me. A video that was distributed by accounts connected to his family. Allegations, William Warren cut in. Unproven allegations. I have the original footage. Silence. William's face went pale. That's impossible. The security system was accessed by your nephew, who edited the footage to serve his purposes. Renee pulled out a document. I also have chat logs showing Bradley coordinating with family members to distribute the manipulated video, and emails showing that discriminatory practices at the Harrison Grand were approved at the corporate level. These so-called records are from disgruntled employees with axes to grind. William sputtered. Dorothy Jenkins has been trying to cause trouble for years, and whoever else you've got is probably hoping for a payout. Casey Mitchell has no axe to grind. They simply witnessed a crime and chose to document it. Renee looked around the table. Which brings me to the real issue here. Someone at corporate approved Bradley's discriminatory practices. Someone signed off on the system he created. She slid the document toward Victoria. Would you like to explain these reference codes, Victoria? Or should I let my legal team do it? Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment. Fear flashed in her eyes. I don't know what you're implying. I'm implying that this goes deeper than one racist manager. I'm implying that the Warren family has been running a shadow operation inside my company, and I'm implying that you knew about it. That's absurd. Is it? Renee pulled out another document. These are minutes from a board meeting 2 years ago. A meeting where Bradley's discriminatory practices were raised as a concern. A meeting where you personally moved to table the discussion indefinitely. Victoria's face went white. That was taken out of context. Then let's put it in context. Let's show all of this to the shareholders. Let's let them decide who should be removed from leadership. William Warren slammed his hand on the table. This is blackmail. This is accountability. Renee stood slowly. You can vote me out today. Go ahead. But if you do, everything I have goes public. The footage, the records, the emails, the minutes, all of it. She looked at each board member in turn. Or you can do the right thing. Support my leadership. Allow me to clean up the mess that's been festering in this company for decades. And maybe, just maybe, we all walk away from this without destroying everything we've built. The silence stretched for an eternity. Victoria's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. The board will take a brief recess to discuss. Renee nodded and walked out. In the hallway, Michelle was waiting. Well, they're scared. Renee allowed herself a small smile. Victoria's involved somehow. I could see it in her eyes. Whatever Bradley was doing, she knew about it. That's good. Scared people make mistakes. Renee's phone buzzed, a text from Dorothy. There's something else you need to see, something I found in my oldest notebook. Come to the hotel. Michelle frowned. What is it? I don't know. But Dorothy wouldn't reach out unless it was important. 30 minutes later, Renee walked into the lobby of the Harrison Grand. The hotel was empty now, closed for review. The lights were dimmed. The front desk abandoned the usual bustle, replaced by eerie silence. Dorothy stood near the concierge station, her oldest notebook open in her hands. I found something, Dr. Harrison. Something I wrote down in 1989 and then forgot about. She held out the notebook. Look at this entry. Renee read the faded handwriting. New investor meeting today. Overheard Mr. Palmer talking with Mr. Warren Sr. about maintaining standards and keeping certain elements comfortable. Said they needed to manage the guest list carefully to protect property values. Renee looked up sharply. Mr. Palmer. Victoria Palmer's father. He was on the original board of investors. Dorothy's eyes were bright. Don't you see, the Warren family and the Palmer family have been working together from the beginning. This isn't just about Bradley. It's about a system that was built into this company from day one. Renee stared at the notebook entry. 35 years ago, before she even owned this company. The seeds of discrimination had already been planted. And now she understood why Victoria Palmer was so eager to protect Bradley Warren. It wasn't just about one assault. It was about protecting a conspiracy that went back decades. Her phone buzzed. A text from Michelle. Board meeting resuming in 15 minutes. Victoria just called William Warren into a private sidebar. Something's happening. Renee handed the notebook back to Dorothy. Come with me. I want you there when this all comes out. Dorothy straightened her shoulders. I've been waiting 35 years for this, Dr. Harrison. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Renee walked back into the conference room with Dorothy Jenkins at her side. The board members had returned to their seats, but something had changed. Victoria Palmer's mask of professional neutrality had cracked. Her hands trembled slightly as she shuffled papers. William Warren's face was flushed red, his jaw clenched so tight the muscles bulged. They had been arguing. That much was clear. Dr. Harrison. Victoria's voice was strained. The board has reached a decision. Have you? Given the complexity of the situation, we've decided to postpone the vote of no confidence. We'll reconvene in 72 hours to allow for a complete review of all evidence. Renee didn't sit down. She stood at the end of the table, Dorothy beside her, and studied each face. That's not good enough. Excuse me? 72 hours gives you time to destroy evidence, time to coordinate stories, time to prepare your lawyers. Renee placed her hand on Dorothy's shoulder. This woman has 35 years of documentation proving systematic discrimination in this company. 35 years of complaints that were buried. Names, dates, incidents, all written down. Victoria's eyes flickered to the notebook in Dorothy's hands. Employee grievances are handled through proper HR channels. They were handled by being ignored. Renee pulled out her phone. I have something else. A recording made yesterday by Casey Mitchell. Would you like to hear it? She pressed play before anyone could object. Bradley Warren's voice filled the room. Don't worry, Uncle Bill. I've already contacted the security team. The footage will be cleaned up before anyone can subpoena it. We just need Victoria to stall the board meeting until we can get our lawyers lined up. By the time that woman tries to prove anything, there won't be any evidence left. The recording continued. William Warren's voice. What about the housekeeper? The one with the notebooks? Bradley Dorothy. She's nothing. A bitter old woman nobody takes seriously. Her records are hearsay. We'll discredit her in 5 minutes. Victoria's voice unmistakably. I can handle the board. Most of them don't want this kind of scandal anyway. They'll vote for stability over justice every time. The recording ended. Silence. Victoria Palmer's face had gone white as chalk. That recording was obtained illegally? She whispered. Actually, it wasn't. Casey was in the room when you made these plans. Georgia is a one-party consent state. They had every right to record a conversation they were part of. Renee looked around the table. Now, would anyone else like to explain to me how stability over justice has been the operating principle of this company? Marcus Chen stood up slowly. I didn't know about any of this. I swear to God, Renee, I had no idea. I believe you, Marcus. Renee's voice softened slightly, which is why I'm giving everyone in this room a choice. You can stand with me and help clean up this company. Or you can stand with them and face the consequences. Robert Thornton, raised his hand like a schoolboy. What kind of consequences? The evidence I have doesn't just implicate Bradley Warren. It implicates everyone who knew about his practices and chose to look the other way. Renee met Victoria's eyes, including board members who voted to table discussions about discrimination complaints. Victoria's composure finally shattered. You can't prove anything. Those meetings were confidential. The minutes were sealed. Were they? Renee smiled coldly. Dorothy, would you like to tell them what you found? Dorothy stepped forward. Her voice was steady despite the weight of decades pressing down on her shoulders. In 1989, I was cleaning the executive conference room after hours. I found a document that had fallen behind the credenza, meeting minutes from an investor discussion. She opened her oldest notebook. I copied it word for word. Mr. Palmer and Mr. Warren Sr. agreed that property values must be protected through careful management of guest demographics. Motion passed unanimously. Dorothy looked directly at Victoria. Your father helped build discrimination into the foundation of this company, Ms. Palmer, before Dr. Harrison ever owned it, before any of us knew what was really happening. Victoria's hand flew to her throat. That was my father's generation. That has nothing to do with me. Doesn't it? Renee pulled out another document. This is an email from 3 years ago. You personally approved Bradley Warren's request to implement enhanced screening protocols for certain guest categories. The email specifically mentions security deposits for guests from high-risk demographics. That was about fraud prevention. It was about discrimination, and you knew it. The room erupted. The room. William Warren jumped to his feet, knocking his chair backward. This is a witch hunt. You're trying to destroy this company because one employee made a mistake. One employee? Renee's voice rose for the first time. Your nephew has been running a racist operation for 15 years. He built systems to discriminate against black guests, Latino guests, Asian guests, anyone who didn't look like him. And you knew Victoria knew. And you all looked the other way because it was profitable. You have no proof of profit motives. I have your quarterly reports. Renee slammed another folder on the table. The Harrison Grand has consistently underperformed compared to other properties in the chain, but its complaint rate for discrimination is 400% higher. You weren't making more money. You were just protecting your family's power. William's face twisted with rage. My family built this company. Your family invested in this company. I built it. Renee's voice cracked with decades of suppressed fury. I started with nothing. I cleaned hotel rooms for minimum wage while your family was summering in the Hamptons. I worked 18-hour days while you were playing golf at the country club. This company exists because I refused to accept what people like you told me I was worth. The silence that followed was absolute. Renee took a breath, steadied herself. Here's what's going to happen. I'm calling a press conference in 2 hours. I'm going to present all of this evidence to the public. The recordings, the emails, Dorothy's notebooks. Everything. Victoria's voice was barely audible. You'll destroy the company. No, I'll save it. Renee looked around the table one final time. The question is whether any of you will be part of what comes next. She turned and walked out, Dorothy following close behind. 2 p.m., Community Center Ballroom. Word had spread fast. Michelle Torres had worked her contacts, and now the room was packed. Reporters from every major outlet, civil rights leaders, community activists, former employees of the Harrison Grand who had heard what was happening and wanted to witness it. And somewhere in the crowd, shareholders who had received emergency notices about what was about to unfold. Renee stood backstage, her heart pounding. You ready for this? Michelle asked. I've been ready my whole life. Once you go out there, there's no taking it back. Everything becomes public record. Good. Michelle squeezed her arm. Your mama would be proud. Renee touched the gold locket at her throat. James's face smiled up at her from the tiny photograph inside. So would my husband. She walked onto the stage. The crowd fell silent as she approached the podium. Cameras flashed. Recording lights blinked red. Every eye in the room locked onto the black woman with the fading bruise on her cheek and the fire in her eyes. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Renee Harrison. I am the CEO and founder of Harrison Hospitality Group. 3 days ago, I was physically assaulted in the lobby of my own hotel by a manager named Bradley Warren. She paused, letting the words sink in. That assault was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of decades of systematic discrimination that has infected my company from its very foundations. Today, I'm going to show you the truth. All of it. The screen behind her flickered to life. The lobby footage played first, unedited, unmanipulated. Every moment of Bradley's aggression captured in crystal clarity. His grab for her wrist, his invasion of her space, the slap that cracked across her face. Gasps rippled through the audience. This is what actually happened, Renee said, as the footage continued. What you may have seen online was a deliberately edited version created to make me appear as the aggressor. That edited video was produced by Bradley Warren's staff and distributed by accounts connected to his family. She advanced to the next slide. Bradley Warren is the nephew of William Warren, a major shareholder in Harrison Hospitality. The Warren family has been involved with this company since 1989. And since 1989, they have been building systems designed to discriminate against guests of color. Dorothy Jenkins walked onto the stage carrying her box of notebooks. This is Dorothy Jenkins. She has worked at the Harrison Grand for 35 years. During that time, she has documented every incident of discrimination she witnessed, every complaint that was buried, every racist comment from management, every time someone was told to keep quiet. Dorothy approached the microphone. Her hands shook, but her voice was clear. My name is Dorothy Jenkins. I started at the Harrison Grand as a housekeeper in 1989. I was 19 years old. She opened her oldest notebook. On my third day of work, I heard my supervisor tell another housekeeper that we needed to be extra careful with colored guests because they were more likely to steal. That was the first entry in this notebook. She held up the worn pages. Since then, I have written down everything. Every time a black family was charged extra deposits. Every time a Hispanic guest was given a worse room. Every time someone who looked like me was treated like a criminal for simply existing in a nice hotel. Dorothy's voice cracked. Nobody ever asked to see these notebooks. Nobody ever cared. Until Dr. Harrison walked into that lobby 3 days ago and refused to be invisible. The audience was utterly silent. I am 68 years old, Dorothy continued. I have worked in hotels my entire adult life. I have been passed over for promotion 11 times. I have watched white employees with less experience and less dedication move ahead while I stayed behind. And every single time I was told it was just business. Just the way things are. She looked directly into the cameras. It doesn't have to be the way things are. That's what I learned this week. When someone with power finally decides to fight back, things can change. She stepped aside. Renee returned to the microphone. What Dorothy has documented is not ancient history. It continued until 3 days ago. Here is evidence showing that Bradley Warren implemented systematic discrimination protocols with full knowledge and approval from corporate leadership. The emails appeared on screen. Victoria Palmer's signature clearly visible. This email sent 3 years ago approved what Bradley Warren called enhanced screening protocols. In practice, this meant requiring additional identification from guests of color, charging higher security deposits, assigning worse rooms. More documents appeared. These are internal reports showing complaint rates. The Harrison Grand had 400% more discrimination complaints than any other property in our chain. 400%. And every single complaint was dismissed as a misunderstanding. A murmur rose from the crowd. But it gets worse. Renee played the recording. Bradley's voice filled the ballroom, then William Warren's, then Victoria Palmer's. The footage will be cleaned up before anyone can subpoena it. Dorothy, she's nothing. A bitter old woman nobody takes seriously. I can handle the board. Most of them don't want this kind of scandal anyway. The recording ended. Renee let the silence stretch. These are the people who have been running my company. People who conspired to destroy evidence of assault. People who dismissed a 35-year employee as nothing. People who prioritized stability over justice. She gripped the podium. No more. The audience erupted in applause. Renee held up her hand. I'm not finished. There's one more thing you need to know. The room quieted. Hidden in our investor agreement is a provision that has never been used. Article 7, Section 12. It allows the CEO to call a special shareholder vote when faced with documented civil rights violations. This provision can strip voting rights from any shareholder bloc found complicit in discriminatory practices. She looked directly at the cameras. As of this moment, I am invoking Article 7, Section 12. I am calling an emergency shareholder meeting for tomorrow morning. And I am asking shareholders to vote to remove the Warren family's controlling interest in Harrison Hospitality. Chaos erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Camera flashes exploded. Somewhere in the back of the room, William Warren was pushing toward the exit, his face purple with rage. If shareholders approve this motion, Renee continued, her voice rising above the noise, the Warren family will lose their voting rights. They will no longer have any say in how this company operates. And Bradley Warren will face criminal charges for assault and evidence tampering. She paused. This is not about revenge. This is about building something better. A company where everyone is welcome. Where dignity is not negotiable. Where 35-year employees like Dorothy Jenkins are valued instead of ignored. She touched her bruised cheek. 3 days ago, a man hit me because he thought he could get away with it. Because he thought his family's money and connections would protect him. Because he looked at a black woman and saw someone he could push around. Her voice hardened to steel. He was wrong. The crowd rose to their feet. The applause was deafening. In the back of the room, Dorothy Jenkins wept openly. And somewhere outside, Bradley Warren was being loaded into a police car, handcuffs glinting in the afternoon sun. 5 p.m. After the press conference, Renee sat alone in a small office behind the ballroom, her hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee. The adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Michelle burst through the door. It's happening. Social media is on fire. The real footage is everywhere. They're comparing it to the edited version, showing how it was manipulated. Public opinion is turning. What about the stock? Down another 5%. But analysts are already saying it's temporary. They think the cleanup will ultimately strengthen the company. Michelle sat down across from her. You did it, Renee. You actually did it. It's not over yet. The shareholder vote is tomorrow. You'll win. After today, there's no way the Warrens can hold on to their position. Renee set down her coffee. Victoria Palmer called me 20 minutes ago. Michelle's eyebrows shot up. What did she want? To negotiate. She offered to resign from the board quietly if I agreed not to pursue criminal charges against her personally. What did you say? Renee smiled grimly. I said she should have thought about consequences before she approved discrimination protocols. So no deal. No deal. She made her choices. Now she lives with them. Michelle studied her friend's face. How are you feeling? Really? Renee was quiet for a long moment. When I was 16 years old, I cleaned rooms at a hotel in Mobile. There was a guest, a white man, who complained about finding me in the hallway. Said it ruined his vacation just having to look at me. She touched her locket. My mother told me to keep my head down. Don't make waves. Survive. But you didn't. No. I built something instead. I thought if I owned the hotels, I could make them different. Better. Safe for people who look like me. Her voice cracked. And then I found out that even my own company wasn't safe. That the rot had been there from the beginning. That everything I built was infected with the same poison I was trying to escape. Michelle reached across and squeezed her hand. But now you know. And you're cutting out the infection. Am I? Renee looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Or am I just putting a bandage on something that can never really heal? You're doing both. That's what change looks like. Messy, painful, incomplete. Michelle leaned closer. But you're also giving hope to people who never had any. Dorothy Jenkins waited 35 years for someone to care about her notebooks. Casey Mitchell risked their career to do the right thing. Because of you, they finally feel like the truth matters. Renee wiped her eyes. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. Tomorrow's going to be historic. The door opened. Dorothy peeked in hesitantly. Dr. Harrison, there's someone here who wants to see you. Who? Dorothy stepped aside. A young black woman walked in. She couldn't have been more than 23 or 24. She wore a simple dress and carried herself with quiet dignity. Dr. Harrison, my name is Jasmine Washington. 3 months ago, my wedding reception was at the Harrison Grand. Renee's heart clenched. Casey had told her about this wedding, about Bradley calling security, about the bride's mother crying in front of all her guests. I saw the press conference, Jasmine continued. I saw Dorothy speak. I saw the footage. Her voice trembled. I just wanted to say thank you. For fighting. For not letting them sweep it under the rug, like they tried to do with us. Renee stood and crossed the room. I'm so sorry for what happened to you. To your family. It's not your fault. You didn't know. I should have known. It was my hotel. My responsibility. Jasmine shook her head. You can't be everywhere. You can't see everything. But when you found out, you did something about it. That's more than anyone else ever did. She reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. This is from my wedding day, before everything went wrong. My mother's smiling. My grandmother's there. Everyone looks so happy. She handed the photo to Renee. I want you to have it, to remember why this fight matters. Renee looked at the image. A beautiful young black woman in white surrounded by family, radiating joy that the world had tried to steal from her. I'll keep it on my desk, Renee said quietly. And every day I'll remember what we're fighting for. Jasmine hugged her. Don't give up, Dr. Harrison. Whatever happens tomorrow, don't give up. 9 p.m. Renee's hotel room. She couldn't sleep. Tomorrow morning, the shareholders would vote. Either the Warren family would lose their power, or they would find a way to survive. Either Renee would emerge victorious, or she would be removed from the company she had built. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter, Michelle. Watch the press conference. Cried the whole time. So proud of you, Mama. Whatever happens tomorrow, you've already won. Another text from Dorothy. Couldn't sleep either. Just want you to know those notebooks finally found their purpose. Thank you for listening. Another from Casey. My grandmother called. First time in months. She said she saw me on the news standing behind you. She said she was proud of me. I didn't know that was possible. Renee set down her phone. Tomorrow would decide everything. But tonight, she held on to these messages like prayers. Proof that the fight had already meant something. That 35 years of hidden truth had finally found its voice. That a young person had found the courage to stand up because someone older had shown them it was possible. Her mother had told her to keep her head down, survive. Her husband had told her to dream big, build something. Tomorrow she would find out which advice would save her. 6 a.m. The morning of the shareholder vote. Renee dressed in her navy blue dress one more time. The same dress she had worn 3 days ago when Bradley Warren slapped her across the face. It felt like armor now. Michelle picked her up at 6:30. Dorothy was already in the back seat, her notebooks carefully packed in a messenger bag. The venue is already filling up, Michelle reported. More shareholders showed up than we expected. The proxy votes are running about 65 to 35 in your favor, but that could change. What about the Warren family? William is bringing his lawyers. Victoria Palmer resigned from the board at midnight. She's trying to distance herself. Too late for that. They drove in silence. When they arrived, the conference hall was chaos. Reporters lined the perimeter. Security guards checked credentials at every door. Shareholders clustered in nervous groups whispering about what they had seen on the news. Renee walked through the crowd with her head high. People stared. Some nodded respectfully. Others looked away, unwilling to meet her eyes. She found her seat at the front of the room. William Warren sat across the aisle, surrounded by lawyers in expensive suits. His face was gray with exhaustion and barely suppressed fury. The chairman of the board, a neutral party, brought in specifically for this vote, called the meeting to order. We are here to vote on the motion invoked under Article 7, Section 12 of our investor agreement. The motion, as filed by CEO Dr. Renee Harrison, calls for the suspension of voting rights for any shareholder bloc found complicit in documented civil rights violations. He read the legal language carefully. Evidence has been submitted, including security footage, internal communications, employee documentation, and recorded conversations. The board's independent counsel has reviewed this evidence and certified it as authentic. William Warren's lead lawyer stood up. We object to this entire proceeding. The evidence was gathered without proper authorization. The recordings were made without consent. This is a targeted attack against a founding family. Your objections are noted, the chairman said flatly. Georgia law allows one-party consent recordings. The evidence has been authenticated. We will proceed with the vote. This is outrageous. Sit down, counselor, or you will be removed. The lawyer sat. The chairman turned to the shareholders. The motion requires a 2/3 majority to pass. Voting will now commence. Tablets were distributed. Shareholders entered their votes. Renee sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her heart hammering against her ribs. The numbers climbed on the screen. 60% in favor, 65%, 70%, 73%. The motion passed. The room exploded. William Warren jumped to his feet, screaming at his lawyers. Shareholders surged forward. Reporters shouted questions. Camera flashes erupted like lightning. But Renee barely heard any of it. She turned to Dorothy, who was crying openly, her weathered hands pressed against her mouth. "We did it," Dorothy whispered. "After all these years, we did it." Renee pulled the older woman into her arms. "No, Dorothy. You did it. Your notebooks, your courage, your 35 years of refusing to let the truth die." Behind them, police officers were approaching William Warren. "William Warren, you are being detained for questioning regarding evidence tampering and conspiracy to obstruct justice." "You can't do this. Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir. That's why we're here." They led him out through a side door. Renee watched him go. The man whose family had tried to destroy her. The man who had called Dorothy nothing. The man who had protected his nephew's racism for 15 years. Gone. Michelle appeared at her elbow. "It's really over." "No," Renee said quietly. "It's just beginning. Now we have to rebuild." She looked around at the chaos, at the crying shareholders, and the defeated lawyers, and the jubilant supporters. "We have to prove that this company can be what I always wanted it to be. A place where everyone belongs. A place where dignity is the foundation." She touched the bruise on her cheek one last time. "That's the real work. And it starts today." The courthouse was packed when Bradley Warren was brought in for his arraignment. 3 days had passed since the shareholder vote. 3 days of chaos, restructuring, and round-the-clock work. 3 days that felt like 3 years. Renee sat in the front row of the gallery, Dorothy on one side, Michelle Torres on the other. Casey Mitchell sat 2 rows behind them, baseball cap pulled low, still nervous about being seen in public. Bradley shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit. His silver hair was disheveled. His face was pale and unshaven. The confident manager who had slapped Renee across the face looked like he had aged 20 years in 72 hours. Bradley Warren, the judge began, you are charged with assault and battery evidence tampering and conspiracy to obstruct justice. How do you plead? Bradley's lawyer stood up. Not guilty, Your Honor. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Bail is set at $500,000, the judge continued. Given the defendant's family resources, and the evidence of flight risk electronic monitoring will be required if bail is posted. Bradley turned to look at the gallery. His eyes found Renee. For a long moment they stared at each other. The last time their eyes had met, he had been standing over her, his hand still stinging from the slap he had delivered. He had been so confident then, so certain that his family name would protect him from any consequences. Now he was in chains. Renee didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply held his gaze until he looked away. That was enough. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Dr. Harrison, do you think Bradley Warren will be convicted? That's for the courts to decide. I have faith in the justice system. What about the Warren family's claims that this is all a vendetta? The evidence speaks for itself. 35 years of documentation, security footage, recorded conversations. This isn't a vendetta, it's accountability. Will you accept a settlement from the Warren family? Renee paused. My lawyers are in discussions with their representatives, but I want to be clear about something. She looked directly into the cameras. This was never about money. This was about dignity, about respect, about building a company where everyone is welcome regardless of what they look like. She touched the fading bruise on her cheek. No amount of money can undo what happened. But maybe, just maybe, we can build something better going forward. 2 p.m., Harrison Hospitality Headquarters. The conference room was filled with lawyers. Michelle Torres sat at Renee's right hand, her legal team spread around the table. Across from them sat the Warren family's attorneys, a small army of expensive suits looking increasingly uncomfortable. Let me be clear about our position, the lead Warren attorney began. My clients are prepared to negotiate a comprehensive settlement that addresses all outstanding issues. Define comprehensive, Michelle said flatly. The Warren family will sell their remaining shares at current market value. They will sign non-disclosure agreements regarding internal company matters. In exchange, Dr. Harrison will drop all civil claims and refrain from making further public statements about the family. No. The lawyer blinked. Excuse me. I said no. Renee leaned forward. Your clients conspired to cover up assault. They orchestrated a smear campaign using manipulated video. They have been complicit in systematic discrimination for decades, and you want me to stay quiet. Dr. Harrison, please be reasonable. Continued litigation will be expensive and time-consuming for everyone involved. Then your clients should have thought about that before Bradley slapped me. Michelle slid a document across the table. Here are our terms. The Warren family sells all shares at 30% below market value, representing damages caused by their misconduct. They sign statements acknowledging their role in enabling discriminatory practices. They establish a $10 million fund for victims of discrimination at Harrison Properties. And they waive any future claims against the company or its leadership. The Warren attorney's face went red. That's extortion. That's justice. Renee's voice was ice. Your clients had choices. At every step they chose to protect their power instead of doing what was right. Now they pay the price. We'll never agree to these terms. Then we'll see you in court. And I'll make sure every piece of evidence we have becomes part of the public record. Renee stood. The press conference about the settlement or lack thereof is scheduled for 4 o'clock. You have until 3:30 to decide. She walked out. Michelle followed her into the hallway. They'll cave. I know. You were magnificent in there. I was tired. Renee rubbed her eyes. I've barely slept since this started. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. I feel his hand. I hear what he called me. Michelle squeezed her arm. It gets better. I've been doing this work for 30 years. The nightmares fade, the anger becomes fuel, and eventually you realize that what you survived made you stronger than anything they could throw at you. I hope you're right. I'm always right. It's very annoying. Renee laughed despite herself. At 3:25, the Warren attorneys returned to the conference room. We accept your terms. The documents were signed by 4 o'clock. The press conference was canceled. And just like that, the Warren family's 60-year grip on Harrison hospitality was over. 6 p.m., the Harrison Grand Hotel. Renee walked through the empty lobby for the first time since the incident. The hotel had been closed for a week now. No guests, no staff, just echoing silence and the smell of cleaning products. Dorothy walked beside her, keys jangling at her hip. Strange being here like this, Dorothy said quietly. I've worked here 35 years, never saw it empty before. Does it feel different? It feels like possibility. Dorothy touched one of the marble columns. Like maybe we can finally make it what it was supposed to be. Renee stopped in the center of the lobby. This was where it had happened. Right here. She could still see the spot where her earring had landed after Bradley's slap. I designed this space to feel welcoming, she said softly. I wanted people to walk in and immediately feel like they belonged, like they were home. That's how I felt when I first started working here, Dorothy admitted. Before the Warren family got involved. Before Bradley. There was a time when this place was good. It will be again. Renee turned to face her. Dorothy, I want you to be the new general manager. Dorothy's eyes widened. Dr. Harrison, I'm just a housekeeper. I don't have the education or the training or... You have 35 years of experience. You know this hotel better than anyone alive. You know the staff, the guests, the systems. Renee took her hands. Most importantly, you know what it means to be treated with dignity, and you know what happens when that dignity is taken away. Tears spilled down Dorothy's weathered cheeks. I'm 68 years old. I was planning to retire next year. Retire after you fixed what was broken. Retire knowing you made a difference. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. My grandmother cleaned houses her whole life. My mother cleaned hotels. I've been cleaning since I was 16. Her voice cracked. Nobody in my family ever managed anything. We were always the ones taking orders, not giving them. Until now. Dorothy wiped her eyes. You really think I can do this? I know you can. I've seen your notebooks. I've seen how carefully you document everything. I've seen how much you care. Renee smiled. That's not just good housekeeping. That's leadership. Dorothy took a shaky breath. Then I accept. But I have conditions. Name them. I want final say on all new hires. No more letting HR push through candidates without proper vetting. Done. I want monthly meetings with you personally. Not your assistant, not your regional director. You. Done. And I want a portrait of my grandmother in the staff break room. Her name was Bessie Mae Jenkins. She worked herself to death so her children could have better lives. I want everyone who works here to know where we came from. Renee's eyes filled with tears. Done. They embraced in the empty lobby, two black women who had fought their whole lives to be seen finally standing in a space they could call their own. The next morning, Casey Mitchell arrived at the Harrison Grand for their first day in a new role. Compliance and Oversight Coordinator. A position that hadn't existed before. A position created specifically to ensure that what happened under Bradley Warren could never happen again. Dorothy met them at the door. Ready for this? Honestly, no. Casey clutched their messenger bag nervously. I've never had a job with actual responsibility before. What if I mess up? Then you learn from it and do better next time. That's what growth looks like. But what if people hate me? Some of the old staff are coming back. They know I was the one who turned over the evidence. They probably think I'm a traitor. Dorothy put her hand on Casey's shoulder. Some people will hate you no matter what you do. That's their problem, not yours. The question is whether you can look at yourself in the mirror and be proud of what you see. Casey thought about their grandmother, about the stories she told of being mistreated in hotels just like this one, about the phone call after the press conference the first time in months she had reached out. "I'm proud of you," she had said through tears. "I never thought I'd see the day when one of my grandchildren stood up like that." "I can do this," Casey said with more confidence. "I know you can. Now come on, we have work to do." The rehiring process began that afternoon. Every former employee had been invited to apply for their old position. But this time the process would be different. This time there would be no automatic approvals, no favors for family connections, no looking the other way. Renee sat in on the first round of interviews personally. Marcus, a young bellman who had been at the hotel for 3 years, came in looking nervous. "I just want to say," he began before anyone could speak, "I'm sorry. I saw what was happening. I heard the things Mr. Warren said, and I never did anything to stop it." "Why not?" Renee asked quietly. "I was scared. I needed the job. I have a daughter. She's 4. His voice cracked. "I told myself it wasn't my business, that speaking up would only get me fired. But after I saw the press conference, after I heard Dorothy talk about her notebooks, I realized that staying quiet made me part of the problem." "What would you do differently now?" "Everything." Marcus met her eyes. "I'd report what I saw. I'd stand up for guests who were being mistreated. I'd risk my job to do the right thing. Even if it meant losing everything." "Losing my job isn't everything. Losing my integrity is." He paused. "My daughter is going to grow up in this world. She's mixed race. Someday someone might treat her the way I watched Mr. Warren treat guests. How can I look her in the eye if I never tried to make things better?" Renee studied him for a long moment. "You're hired." Marcus's face crumpled with relief. "Thank you. I promise you won't regret this." "I better not." The interviews continued for days. Some employees were welcomed back immediately. Others were rejected after revealing attitudes that hadn't changed. A few were offered positions at other properties far from the Harrison Grand and its painful memories. Angela, the warm clerk, who had treated the white couple so differently from Renee, wasn't invited to return. Neither were the security guards who had smirked during Bradley's tirade. Neither was anyone who had participated in the racist group chats that Casey had documented. But for every person turned away, another was given a second chance. "People can change," Dorothy said during one of their evening debriefs. "I've seen it happen. Men who used to make ugly jokes suddenly treating everyone with respect because they realized someone was watching. Women who went along with discrimination because they were scared finding their voices when they felt safe." "How do you tell the difference?" Renee asked. "Between someone who really changed and someone who's just saying what we want to hear?" "You watch, you listen, you give them opportunities to prove themselves." Dorothy shrugged. "And sometimes you get it wrong. That's why we need systems, policies, ways to catch problems before they become crises. That's what Casey is for." Casey's part of it. But ultimately it's about culture. About making sure everyone who works here knows that dignity isn't optional. That treating people with respect isn't just policy, it's who we are. Renee nodded slowly. 35 years you waited for this. 35 years I wrote in those notebooks thinking nobody would ever care. Dorothy smiled. Turns out I was wrong. The right person just hadn't come along yet. 2 weeks after the shareholder vote, Bradley Warren's trial began. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Security footage showed every moment of the assault. Multiple witnesses testified about Bradley's discriminatory practices. Casey provided documentation of systemic racism going back years. Dorothy's notebooks were admitted as evidence of a pattern of behavior. Bradley's defense tried everything. They claimed the footage was edited. Expert analysis proved it wasn't. They claimed Renee had provoked him. Multiple witnesses contradicted them. They claimed the discrimination policies were standard industry practice. Other hotel executives testified that they absolutely were not. By the third day of trial, Bradley's lawyers were openly arguing amongst themselves in the hallway. Renee attended every session. She sat in the same seat, in the same navy blue dress, watching the man who had struck her try to squirm out of accountability. She didn't gloat. She didn't make a scene. She simply bore witness. On the fourth day, Bradley took the stand in his own defense. It was a disaster. "I didn't know who she was," he insisted when the prosecutor asked about the assault. "She was being aggressive, making accusations. I felt threatened. Threatened by a 62-year-old woman asking about a billing error. She was causing a scene, disrupting my lobby." "Your lobby? You mean Dr. Harrison's lobby? The woman whose name is on the building?" Bradley's face flushed red. "I meant the lobby I was responsible for managing. The same lobby where you implemented policies requiring extra identification from black guests. The same lobby where your staff charged higher security deposits based on race. Those policies were about fraud prevention. Then why did they only apply to guests of color?" Bradley had no answer. The prosecution continued for hours, methodically destroying every excuse, every justification, every attempt to minimize what he had done. By the end of the day, even Bradley's own lawyers looked defeated. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted when the verdict was announced. Reporters rushed for the exits to file their stories. Bradley's family members wept in the gallery. His lawyers began whispering urgently about appeals. Renee sat perfectly still. Guilty. The word echoed in her mind like a bell. After everything, after all the manipulation and the lies and the attempts to make her the villain, the truth had prevailed. Dorothy squeezed her hand. "How does it feel?" Renee thought about the question. "It feels like the beginning of healing." Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Bradley Warren was sentenced to 18 months in state prison plus 5 years probation. He was ordered to pay restitution to every guest who had been discriminated against during his tenure. He was permanently banned from working in the hospitality industry. At the sentencing hearing, Renee was given the opportunity to speak. She approached the podium slowly, her navy dress catching the light, her healed cheek showing no trace of the bruise that had once marked it. "Your Honor, I didn't come here to ask for vengeance. I came here to ask for justice. For the black families who were charged extra because of their skin color. For the Latino guests given the worst rooms because someone decided they didn't deserve better. For the employees who were afraid to speak up because they knew the system would protect their abuser." She looked at Bradley. "Mr. Warren saw me as someone without power. Someone he could push around. Someone whose dignity didn't matter." Her voice hardened. "He was wrong. My dignity matters. The dignity of every person who walks into one of my hotels matters. And today, this court has affirmed that truth." She turned back to the judge. "I hope Mr. Warren uses his time in prison to reflect on the harm he's caused. I hope he emerges a changed man. But whether he does or not, the message has been sent. Discrimination has consequences. Assault has consequences. And no amount of family money or corporate connections can protect someone from accountability." She returned to her seat. Dorothy was crying quietly. Casey was crying too. Even Michelle, who had seen 100 courtrooms and 1,000 victims seeking justice, wiped her eyes. Bradley was led away in handcuffs. As he passed Renee's row, he stopped. "You ruined my life," he hissed. Renee looked up at him calmly. "No, Mr. Warren. You ruined your own life. I just made sure you couldn't ruin anyone else's." He was pulled away by the guards. And that was the last time Renee Harrison ever saw Bradley Warren. 3 days later, the Harrison Grand Hotel reopened. It was the same building, the same lobby, the same gold letters above the door. But everything else had changed. New staff trained in dignity and respect. New policies ensuring equal treatment for every guest. New systems for reporting discrimination and holding people accountable. And at the front desk, in a crisp new suit with General Manager on her nameplate, stood Dorothy Jenkins. Renee arrived early on reopening day, before the first guests, before the press, before anyone else. Dorothy was already there adjusting flowers in the lobby, checking that every detail was perfect. "Nervous?" Renee asked. "Terrified." Dorothy laughed. 68 years old and starting a whole new career. My grandmother would think I'd lost my mind. What would she say if she could see you now? Dorothy was quiet for a moment. She'd say, "About damn time, girl. About damn time." They laughed together, the sound echoing through the empty lobby. The first guest arrived at 9 a.m. It was the Washington family. Jasmine, the young bride whose wedding had been ruined by Bradley Warren, walked through the door with her mother, her grandmother, and her new husband. "We wanted to be first," Jasmine said, her eyes bright with tears. "We wanted to show that this place can be what it was supposed to be." Dorothy welcomed them personally. "The Harrison Grand is honored to have you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Whatever you need, whatever would make your stay special, just ask. This is your home now." Jasmine's grandmother, an elegant woman in her 80s, took Dorothy's hands. "My mother cleaned hotels," she said quietly. "My grandmother cleaned houses. 3 generations of invisible women." She looked around the lobby. "And now here we are, being welcomed by a black woman who runs the whole place." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. "Welcome home," she whispered. "Welcome home." The day continued like that. Guest after guest welcomed with genuine warmth. Staff members treating everyone with equal respect. The systems Renee and Dorothy had built working exactly as they were supposed to. Casey moved through the lobby discreetly, watching for any signs of the old problems. They found none. Marcus the bellman helped an elderly black couple with their luggage, chatting warmly about the best restaurants in the area. The new front desk team checked in guests of every color without asking for extra identification or demanding additional deposits. It was what Renee had always dreamed this hotel could be. At 5 p.m. she found Dorothy in her office reviewing occupancy reports. 93% booked for the week, Dorothy reported. "And the reviews coming in are incredible. People are saying it feels different here, safer, more welcoming." "Because it is. Because we made it that way." Dorothy set down her reports. "You know what I keep thinking about?" "What?" "All those years I wrote in my notebooks. All those incidents I documented that nobody wanted to see." She touched the framed portrait of her grandmother that now hung on her office wall. "I used to wonder if any of it mattered, if anyone would ever care. It all mattered. I know that now. But back then, in the dark times when it felt like nothing would ever change..." Dorothy shook her head. "I almost gave up so many times, almost threw those notebooks away." "What stopped you?" "Hope, I guess. Stupid, stubborn hope that someday someone would come along who was strong enough to fight, smart enough to win, brave enough to stand up when everyone else stayed seated." Dorothy looked at Renee. "You were that person. You walked into my lobby and got slapped across the face, and instead of backing down, you burned the whole rotten system to the ground. I couldn't have done it without you, without Casey, without everyone who chose truth over safety." "That's the thing about change," Dorothy said softly. "It never happens alone. It takes a whole bunch of people deciding together that they're not going to accept what was anymore, that they're going to build what could be." She smiled. "We're building something here, Dr. Harrison. Something that matters. Something that lasts." Renee nodded slowly. Through the window, she could see the lobby filling with guests. Families of every color. Couples holding hands. Business travelers checking their phones. All of them welcomed equally. All of them treated with dignity. Her mother had cleaned hotels like this one. Her grandmother, too. 3 generations of women told they didn't belong in nice places, told to keep their heads down, told to accept what the world gave them. Renee had accepted nothing. She had built something instead. And now, standing in this office with Dorothy Jenkins watching everything they had fought for come to life, she finally understood what her husband James had meant all those years ago. "You're going to own one of these hotels someday," he had told her. "I can see it in your eyes." She didn't just own them now. She had transformed them into something worthy of the fight. 3 months had passed since the Harrison Grand reopened its doors. Renee stood in Dorothy's office watching the older woman review the morning reports. Dorothy had grown into her role as general manager with a grace that surprised everyone except Renee. The woman who had spent 35 years being invisible was now the heart and soul of the hotel. "Occupancy is at 97%, Dorothy reported. "Reviews are the highest in the chain. Staff turnover is down to almost nothing." She looked up with wonder in her eyes. "People actually want to work here now." "Because they're treated with respect. Because you changed everything." Dorothy set down her papers. "Dr. Harrison, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "There's a journalist downstairs, from the New York Times. She's writing a story about what happened here, about the transformation." Dorothy hesitated. "She wants to interview me." Renee smiled. "Then give her an interview." "I've never talked to a big newspaper before. What if I say the wrong thing?" "Dorothy, you've been saying the right thing for 35 years. You just didn't have anyone listening." Renee squeezed her shoulder. "Tell your story, all of it. Let the world know what happens when people who were told to stay silent finally get to speak." 30 minutes later, Dorothy sat across from Sarah Chen, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who had flown in from New York specifically for this story. "Mrs. Jenkins, you kept records for 35 years. What made you start?" Dorothy thought about the question carefully. "My grandmother used to tell me that the truth has to live somewhere, even if nobody's listening, even if it feels pointless." She touched the worn notebook in her lap. "I started writing because I needed to prove to myself that what I was seeing was real, that I wasn't crazy, that the discrimination I witnessed every day actually happened. And nobody ever asked to see your records. Not once. I went through proper channels. I filed complaints. I talked to HR, to managers, to anyone who would listen." Dorothy's voice hardened. "They all told me the same thing. Keep your head down. Don't make waves. It's just the way things are." "What changed?" Dr. Harrison walked through those doors. Dorothy's eyes brightened. She came in like a regular guest, no announcement, no fanfare. And Bradley Warren treated her exactly the way he treated every black person who came through. Grabbed her, insulted her, slapped her across the face. She leaned forward. But here's what was different. She didn't accept it. She didn't keep her head down. She didn't walk away and complain quietly through proper channels. Dorothy's voice trembled with emotion. She stood in the middle of that lobby with blood on her lip and fire in her eyes, and she said enough. She said, "This is my house, and you will not treat people this way in my house." What did that moment mean to you? Dorothy wiped her eyes. It meant 35 years of writing in notebooks finally mattered. It meant someone with power had finally decided to use it for good instead of protecting the status quo. She held up her notebook. It meant the truth finally had a voice loud enough for the world to hear. The interview continued for 2 hours. Dorothy told stories she had never shared publicly. About the black families charged extra deposits. About the Latino staff passed over for promotion. About the Asian guests given the worst rooms. About every small cruelty she had documented over 3.5 decades. By the end, Sarah Chen's eyes were wet. "This is going to be a front-page story, Mrs. Jenkins. I want you to know that." "I'm not doing it for fame." "Then why?" "Because somewhere out there, there's another Dorothy Jenkins. Another woman keeping records nobody wants to see. Another person being told to stay quiet." Dorothy straightened her shoulders. "I want her to know that the silence doesn't last forever, that someday, someone will care enough to listen." The story ran the following Sunday. It was the lead feature in the New York Times Magazine. 6,000 words about the transformation of the Harrison Grand, about Dorothy's notebooks, about the fight for dignity in American hospitality. The headline read, "The Housekeeper Who Changed Everything." Renee read it 3 times before she could speak. "They spelled my name right," Dorothy said when Renee called her. But her voice was shaking with emotion. "My grandmother's name, too. Bessie Mae Jenkins. Right there in the New York Times. You deserve this, Dorothy. Every word of it." "I still can't believe it's real. 68 years old and people are finally listening." The response was overwhelming. Within a week, Dorothy had received over 3,000 letters and emails from hotel workers across the country who had experienced similar discrimination, from guests who had been mistreated and told their complaints didn't matter, from young people inspired by her story to keep their own records. Casey helped her sort through the responses. "This one's from a housekeeper in Las Vegas," Casey said, holding up a letter. "She says she's been documenting discrimination at her hotel for 12 years. Nobody ever believed her. She wants to know if her records might matter someday too." Dorothy took the letter carefully. "Write her back. Tell her the truth always matters. Tell her to keep writing. Tell her she's not alone. Should I give her your contact information? Give her whatever she needs. If my story can help one person find their voice, then all those years of silence were worth something." 2 weeks after the article ran, Renee received an unexpected visitor. Victoria Palmer appeared at the Harrison Grand without warning, looking 10 years older than she had at the board meeting. Her designer suit hung loose on her frame. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly. "Please." Renee studied her former board chair for a long moment. "My office. 5 minutes." They sat across from each other in silence. Victoria's hands trembled slightly as she clutched her purse. "I came to apologize," she finally said. "For what specifically, there's quite a list." Victoria flinched at the sharpness in Renee's voice. "For everything. For protecting Bradley. For burying the complaints. For trying to force you out when you were the one who had been assaulted." She looked down at her hands. "For being part of a system that hurt so many people." "Why now? You didn't seem particularly sorry when you were calling emergency board meetings." "Because I've had 3 months to think about what I did. What my family did." Victoria's voice cracked. "My father built discrimination into this company from the beginning. I knew about it. I chose to look the other way because it was easier than fighting." "It was easier for you, not for the people being discriminated against." "I know that now." Victoria pulled something from her purse, a check. "This is for the Victims Fund, $5 million. From my personal accounts, not the settlement money." Renee didn't touch it. "Why should I accept anything from you?" "Because it's the right thing to do. Because I can't undo the past, but I can try to make the future a little better." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Because I read Dorothy's interview, and I couldn't sleep for 3 nights. Because I finally understand what my silence cost." "Your silence cost people their dignity, their safety, their peace of mind. I know. Do you really understand what it feels like to be treated like you don't belong? To be told your complaints don't matter? To watch the system protect your abuser while you're told to keep quiet?" Victoria shook her head slowly. "No, I'll never fully understand. I'm a white woman from a wealthy family. I've never experienced what Dorothy experienced, what you experienced." She pushed the check closer. "But I can use my privilege to help instead of hurt, if you'll let me." Renee sat in silence for a long moment. "The money goes to the Dorothy Jenkins Scholarship Fund for hospitality students from underserved communities." Victoria nodded immediately. "Whatever you think is best. And I want a public statement from you, acknowledging your role in enabling discrimination, explaining what you're doing to make amends." "I'll do it." "Why?" Renee's voice softened slightly. "What changed?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "My daughter asked me about the article. She's 16. She wanted to know if I was one of the bad guys. Her voice broke completely. I couldn't answer her. I couldn't look my own child in the eye and say I was on the right side. She wiped her eyes. I want to be able to tell her I tried to fix what I helped break, even if it's too late, even if it's not enough. Renee finally reached for the check. It's a start. The Dorothy Jenkins Scholarship Fund was announced the following week. Initial funding came from Victoria Palmer's donation, supplemented by contributions from other shareholders who had been part of the old system. Within a month, the fund had grown to $12 million. The first scholarships were awarded that spring. 20 young people from backgrounds like Dorothy's, like Renee's, like Casey's. Students who had worked as housekeepers, bellmen, front desk clerks. Students who understood hospitality not from textbooks, but from lived experience. They gathered in the lobby of the Harrison Grand for the announcement ceremony. Dorothy stood at the podium, her notebook displayed in a glass case beside her. 68 years ago, I was born in a small house in rural Georgia. My grandmother cleaned houses, my mother cleaned hotels. I cleaned hotels too, starting at 16. She looked out at the young faces. Nobody in my family ever went to college. Nobody ever managed anything. We were told to be grateful for what we had, and not to ask for more. She touched the glass case. I kept these notebooks for 35 years. I wrote down every injustice I witnessed because I believed that the truth had to live somewhere, even when nobody was listening, even when it felt pointless. She smiled at the scholarship recipients. Today, I want to tell you that your truth matters. Your experiences matter. Your voices matter. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to accept injustice just because it's the way things have always been. Dorothy's voice grew stronger. Dr. Harrison walked into this hotel 3 months ago and everything changed. Not because she had money or power or connections, because she refused to be silent, because she stood up and said enough. She looked at Renee, who stood at the side of the room with tears streaming down her face. Each of you has that same power. The power to refuse, the power to speak, the power to change things that people say can never be changed. Dorothy stepped back from the podium. Use it well. The applause lasted for 3 full minutes. That evening, Renee found Casey sitting alone in the staff break room. You okay? Casey looked up quickly, wiping their eyes. Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking. About what? My grandmother called this morning. She's coming to visit next week. Casey's voice trembled. She's never visited me anywhere before. Not once in my whole life. She always said there was no point, that the world wasn't going to change for people like us. What made her change her mind? The article, the scholarship fund, all of it. Casey smiled through their tears. She said she wanted to see with her own eyes what her grandchild helped build. She said maybe she was wrong about the world never changing. Renee sat down beside them. You did help build this, Casey. Every file you saved, every recording you made, every moment you chose truth over safety. I was terrified. The whole time I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act despite it. Casey was quiet for a moment. Dr. Harrison, can I ask you something? Of course. That day in the lobby, when Bradley hit you, were you scared? Renee thought about the question carefully. Yes, I was scared. I was angry. I was humiliated. She touched her cheek where the bruise had long since healed. But mostly I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of accepting. Tired of watching people like Bradley Warren hurt people like us and get away with it. So what made you fight back? I looked around that lobby, and I saw Dorothy. This woman who had worked in my hotel for 35 years, watching discrimination happen every day, keeping records nobody wanted to see. And I thought about my mother, my grandmother, all the women in my family who had kept their heads down because they didn't have any other choice. Renee's voice hardened. And I decided that I had a choice. I could be silent like they had to be, or I could use everything I had built to make sure that silence wasn't the only option anymore. Casey nodded slowly. My grandmother used to say that we didn't have any other choice. She was right. For her generation, she was right. But things are different now. We've made them different. Renee stood. Your grandmother is coming to see what you helped build. Make sure she understands that her granddaughter had a choice and chose to be brave. 6 months after the reopening, the Harrison Grand won the National Hospitality Excellence Award. The ceremony was held in Washington, D.C. Industry leaders from across the country gathered to celebrate the hotel that had become a symbol of transformation. Dorothy accepted the award on stage, her hand shaking as she held the crystal trophy. I want to dedicate this award to everyone who was ever told to stay silent, she said into the microphone. To every housekeeper who saw injustice and wrote it down anyway. To every employee who reported discrimination knowing nothing would change. To every guest who was treated poorly and told their complaint didn't matter. She held up the trophy. This belongs to all of you, because you kept the truth alive when the world wanted it buried. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, Renee found Dorothy alone in a quiet corner, staring at the trophy in her hands. You did it, Dorothy. You really did it. We did it, Dorothy corrected gently. All of us together. I couldn't have done any of this without your notebooks, without your courage, without 35 years of refusing to let the truth die. Dorothy was quiet for a moment. Dr. Harrison, can I tell you something? Anything. There were times over those 35 years when I almost gave up, when I almost threw away all those notebooks and accepted that nothing would ever change. Dorothy's voice trembled. The only thing that kept me going was a dream, a silly, impossible dream that someday someone would walk through those doors who was strong enough to fight. She looked at Renee with tears streaming down her face. You were that person. You walked in wearing that navy blue dress, and you got hit, and you bled, and you stood right back up. And I knew that everything I had written down finally had a purpose. Renee pulled Dorothy into a fierce hug. We found each other at exactly the right moment. God's timing, Dorothy whispered. My grandmother always said to trust God's timing. They stood together for a long moment, two black women who had fought their whole lives to be seen finally standing in a place where the whole world could see them. 1 year after Bradley Warren slapped Renee Harrison across the face, a ceremony was held in the lobby of the Harrison Grand. A new plaque was being unveiled beside the entrance. Renee stood with Dorothy, Casey, Michelle Torres, and dozens of staff members and guests who had been part of the transformation. Jasmine Washington, the young bride whose wedding had been ruined by Bradley's cruelty, was there too. She had returned to the Harrison Grand for her first anniversary, determined to create new memories in the place that had once caused her so much pain. 1 year ago, Renee began, I walked into this lobby as a guest. I was treated with disrespect, with cruelty, with violence. I was told I didn't belong in my own hotel. She paused. Today I want to tell you what I've learned since then. I've learned that change is possible even in places where injustice has roots that go back decades. I've learned that courage is contagious, that one person standing up gives others permission to stand up too. And I've learned that the truth, when it finally gets told, is more powerful than all the lies that tried to bury it. She gestured to the covered plaque. This plaque will hang in this lobby forever. It will remind everyone who enters what we fought for and why it mattered. Dorothy stepped forward to pull the cord. The cloth fell away, revealing the words engraved in bronze, The Harrison Grand, where dignity is our foundation. Dedicated to every person who kept the truth alive when nobody was listening. Your silence is over. Your voice matters. Welcome home. Below the main text in smaller letters. In memory of Bessie Mae Jenkins. In honor of Dorothy Jenkins. In gratitude to everyone who chose courage over comfort. Dorothy touched her grandmother's name with trembling fingers. She can see this, she whispered. Wherever she is, she can see her name on this wall. She's been waiting a long time, Renee said softly. So have I. Dorothy turned to face the crowd. So have all of us. The celebration continued into the evening. Guests and staff mingled freely. Stories were shared. Tears were shed. Laughter echoed through the lobby that had once been a place of cruelty. Casey's grandmother sat in a corner watching everything with wide eyes. She had arrived the day before, the first time she had ever visited her grandchild anywhere. She had expected to find a nice hotel with some improved policies. What she found was a revolution. "You really did this?" she asked Casey for the 100th time. "I was part of it, Grandma, a small part." "There's nothing small about standing up when everyone else stays seated." Her grandmother squeezed Casey's hand with surprising strength. "I spent my whole life telling you to keep your head down. I was wrong. I was so wrong. You were trying to protect me. I was trying to protect you from a world I thought would never change. But you changed it anyway." She wiped her eyes. "My grandchild helped change the world." Across the lobby, Jasmine Washington posed for photos with her husband in front of the new plaque. "I never thought I'd be able to come back here," she admitted to Renee. "After what happened at our wedding, I wanted to burn this place down." "What changed your mind?" "I saw what you built, what Dorothy built, what everyone here built together." Jasmine looked around the transformed space. "This isn't the same hotel where they humiliated my mother. This is something new, something better. It wouldn't exist without you. Your story was part of what woke Casey up, part of what gave them the courage to save those files." Jasmine's eyes widened. "I didn't know that. Your pain mattered. Your experience mattered. Nothing about what happened to you was wasted." Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. "My mother wants to come back too. She wasn't sure if she could handle it, but I'm going to tell her what you said." She took Renee's hands. "I'm going to tell her that her tears mattered, that someone was watching, that something changed because she cried. Bring her back. Let her see what we built from the ashes of her worst day." "I will." At 9 p.m., Renee found herself alone on the mezzanine overlooking the lobby. Dorothy joined her a few minutes later. "Someday, huh? Some year." They stood in comfortable silence watching the celebration below. "Dr. Harrison, what happens now?" "Now we keep going. We expand the model to other properties. We train other hotels how to do what we did. We make sure this transformation isn't just about one building." "That sounds like a lot of work." "It is, but it's work worth doing." Dorothy nodded slowly. "My grandmother used to say that the only work worth doing is work that outlasts you, work that makes things better for people who come after." "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She never learned to read, never went past 3rd grade, but she was the wisest person I ever knew." Dorothy touched the railing. "She would have loved this place. The way it is now, I mean. She would have walked in and felt welcome." "That's all I ever wanted. For everyone to feel welcome. You did it. Against all odds, against all opposition, you did it." Renee shook her head. "We did it. You, me, Casey, Michelle. Everyone who chose to fight instead of accepting what was." She turned to face Dorothy fully. "Promise me something." "Anything. When I'm gone, keep fighting. Keep pushing. Don't let anyone turn this place back into what it was." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. "I promise. On my grandmother's grave, I promise." "And train the next generation. Find the young Dorothys out there, the ones keeping notebooks nobody wants to see. Give them a voice. Give them power. Make sure this fight continues long after we're both gone." "I will." Renee pulled out the gold locket she always wore. Inside was the tiny photograph of her husband, James. "He believed in me when nobody else did. He told me I would own a hotel someday. He didn't live to see it happen." Her voice cracked. "But I think he can see it now. I think he knows what we built." "He knows," Dorothy said firmly. "He knows. and he's proud. They embraced one final time as the celebration continued below them. Two women who had fought their whole lives to be seen. Two women who had refused to accept what the world told them they were worth. Two women who had changed everything. At midnight, the last guests departed. The staff began cleaning up, humming and chatting as they worked. Casey made final rounds, checking that everything was in order. Dorothy reviewed the next day's schedule, already planning how to make tomorrow even better. Renee walked through the empty lobby one final time. She stopped at the spot where Bradley Warren had slapped her, where her earring had fallen, where blood from her split lip had touched the marble floor. The marble had been cleaned countless times since then. No trace of that day remained. But Renee remembered. She remembered the crack of his hand against her face, the shock in his eyes when he realized who she was, the silence of the staff who had watched and done nothing. She remembered Dorothy stepping forward with quiet dignity, Casey saving files in secret, Michelle fighting with everything she had, the shareholders voting to strip the Warren family's power. She remembered the trial, the conviction, the sentence. Bradley Warren, in an orange jumpsuit, finally facing consequences for his cruelty. She remembered the press conference, the town hall, the moment when the truth finally broke free from decades of silence. And she remembered the reopening, the first guests, the new staff, the transformation that proved change was possible, even in places that seemed beyond saving. Renee touched the gold letters of her name above the door. Harrison Grand Hotel. Her mother had cleaned hotels like this one. Her grandmother, too. 3 generations of women told they didn't belong in nice places. But Renee had built something different. Something that welcomed everyone. Something that treated dignity as a foundation, not an afterthought. And she had done it not despite what happened in this lobby, but because of it. Bradley Warren had tried to put her in her place. Instead, he had shown her exactly what her place was. At the head of the table. At the top of the building. At the center of a movement that would outlast them both. Renee Harrison walked out of the Harrison Grand Hotel as the clock struck 1 a.m. Behind her, her name glowed golden in the night. Above her, stars burned in the darkness, like promises waiting to be kept. Ahead of her, a future she had built with her own hands, from her own pain, from her own refusal to accept what the world said she was worth. 3 generations of invisible women, and one who finally said enough. Not in this house. Not ever again.